Okay, so part two, right? So I told you the next video, or the one we're doing right now, is going to be on the unit template. So the first thing I want you to know is um, this unit I designed with you guys in mind, not specifically fourth grade, but with all the conversations I've had with teachers at Glenn. What are some things that you're saying you want to see? What are some priorities you have? And then combining some of my own things that I think will help make the planning process more accessible. So in this very top part where it says unit plan, we're going to think of this area in the pink as just the outline for the unit, just the outline. So the very first thing you would do would be drop in your standards, right? And I just showed you where you would pull those from. So like module 1 HMH, those 4 focus standards, they would plop themselves right here, right? You would create I can learning targets from those standards, okay? And then when it says main anchor text selection, so what stories in HMH will thoroughly cover those standards we said we were going to cover? Sometimes in HMH, it might say we have inference for one day. And you might go, Rachel, that's not enough. This story doesn't cover inference the way that I would expect it to. So you may need to go and hunt in HMH for a story that does thoroughly cover inference in a way that you feel good about. So like last week when I picked the Battle of the Alamo for you guys, that was not week 2. I went and pulled the Battle of the Alamo because I knew your priority standard was inferencing, and that is the story, the text selection where inferencing is the priority standard. So that's where that came from. So obviously, unit assessment, whether your assessment comes from HMH, Mastery Connect, or a combination of both, you know you're developing it as a team to reflect these standards that you've chosen. Remember, in the unit I just created for you, you guys will have one extra summative assessment before Carly and Jasmine. I actually think they told me today that they were going to do that one as well. But either way, you'll end up testing using the same test at the end of the whole quarter because it's the same standards. You're going to end up covering the same standards. All right. This part, activism, historical knowledge, this is where I want you to include something from the social studies and science standards that connect to your unit. So let's say, again, your anchor text had to do with inventors. And one of your social studies standards talks about the light bulb. So then you could easily find a passage on my beautiful brown inventor, Lewis Latimer, and add that in one day when you're doing main idea, right? Because we can teach inference main idea with any text, that sort of thing. This one's just materials you're going to need to accomplish this. So like books that you're choosing to do, games, things like that. This doesn't have to be real complicated. And then the unit vocabulary. So this vocabulary is coming straight from the stories that you've chosen in HMH. Nothing confusing there. Okay. Now, this is the daily part. So I created this part because teacher said to me, Miss Horn, I don't know what the literacy block's supposed to look like. I don't know how long it's supposed to be. I'm overwhelmed, girlfriend. And I'm like, okay, cool, gotcha. So typically I would start with vocabulary for 10 to 15 minutes. Then I would do reading workshop with an I do, we do, you do model on the skill of the day. And then again, this would be where you would integrate your social studies and science. Word work phonics. Typically, I would not have this in my literacy block outside of center or, like intervention time. But you guys have told me as a school, Rachel, these kids really need active, intentional lessons on word work phonics because the gap is so big. Cool, let's include it. So then we have our guided time where you're pulling a group and having the other kids work in some sort of center connected to your skill of the week. And then your writing mini lesson of the day, where you'll do a 5 to 10 minute lesson and then release them for about 20 minutes to do authentic writing, or a grammar mini lesson. Because trying to do both in a day is too much. And you may find writing in general, sometimes you have to sneak in once or twice a week because it's really challenging to fit it all in. And then, of course, however you're formatively assessing them for the day, whether it be an exit ticket, 5-question quiz, just their whiteboards, any sort of formative assessment which leads them towards that summit assessment. What do you need to do to fix before you get there? Okay, I think that covers it.